All right, welcome everybody to the Chasing Larger Sports Stories podcast. It is I, your host, Chase Steffes, and you've got Derek Larger over to my left or your right if you are looking at the screen in opposite direction. So we have got a short show for you today, but there is a lot to talk about with everything that happened. Derek, we saw a lot of good games happen this past weekend, and ones that were kind of predictable and ones that were kind of not. Starting off with the Broncos and Jaguars. Obviously, both me and you picked the Jaguars to win this game. They let us down once again. I do feel like I said, going back to watch the Jaguars play, this team is not bad. Trevor Lawrence is not bad, and everything like that is not bad. They just need that one true number one wide receiver to help put them over the edge, and they can win a lot more games than what people are giving them credit for. And they did make a move today. We'll get to that later on with one of our topics. But going into that game, it was Denver. It was Denver versus Jacksonville. We all thought that Denver was going to lay an egg again on prime time, like they have been. And going into this, they both looked bad. So I wasn't really disappointed. What was your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, I really didn't get a chance to watch much of it, but I mean, of course, two bad teams going, and Russell Wilson did in fact get to actually play and was able to do just enough to be able to get the win. Not much more to it than that. I mean, there's a bunch of other really awesome games that, really happened this week, and there's a lot of really funny stories that happened, and we can get into all those. I mean, just from the Broncos Jaguars one, I expected either team could win. I was just kind of hoping the Jaguars would win, so we would see Bradley Chubb get traded, even though he got traded anyway. But nevertheless, we'll get into that later. But yeah, that's my take on that game.
Yeah, one game that I really want to highlight, and I was watching that live because obviously my team didn't play until Monday night, so I had time to watch, reflect, and watch a few games on Sunday. And one that really stuck out to me was the game that's on replay on the NFL Network right now, and that is the Bears and Cowboys game. There was a few mistakes that were made in that game, not by Justin Fields, but by the rest of the Bears offense. Obviously, you had Montgomery fumble the ball, gave the Cowboys another shot, and obviously put the game to rest at that point. But the Bears were looking really good. Justin Fields was looking really good. He was driving the ball downfield, making good reads, good throws, and showing everybody why the Bears drafted him and what they have to look forward to if you could actually get him somebody to work with and give him time in the pocket. What was your thought on the Cowboys game, and did you think that Justin Fields, kind of quieted the haters a little bit?
Well, I think over the last several weeks, Justin Fields has been playing his best football. I mean, from a accuracy standpoint to a offensive scheme standpoint, I mean, Justin Fields has been putting up better numbers these last few weeks than what he has throughout his entire early career so far. And I think it's also because the emergence of Darnell Mooney. Mooney has actually been playing very well over the last 4 weeks. Has really come on as their number one wide receiver. Even though he's not a number one, he still has separated himself from everyone else. And then we're going to talk about a trade that they made today. Clearly the Bears are on the right track when it comes to Matt Eberflus, despite him being a defensive-minded coach, has really gotten his coaches to help him scheme ways to get Justin Fields in better game plans going forward. And it's working for them. They're scoring more points right now, which is great. I think over the last 2 weeks, they scored 33 against the Patriots. You scored 29 against the Cowboys, which in most scenarios, you could have probably been close to winning the game. But clearly the Cowboys, with Dak Prescott being back in the lineup, just was a force to be reckoned with. It's the most points by any team in the NFL this year. I mean, and that's incredible to think about, given the fact that, the Bears defense, what it can do. And the fact that they gave up 49 is very impressive on the Cowboys' sake. And the fact that they didn't have Ezekiel Elliott playing in that game. And that's even more impressive. So, I mean, there's good to take from both sides. Bears are finally figuring it out offensively. I think it's safe to say the Cowboys offense with Dak Prescott he keeps playing like this, they can beat anyone.
Yeah, you could tell that the Bears were trying to get rid of some cap space. Obviously, we saw the trade that happened with Robert Quinn, and we'll get, like we said, we'll get into the rest of the trades. We don't want to spoil anything so
They
far.
now will have over $100 million in cap space next year.
Exactly. We don't want to spoil the trade so far, but we'll just let you know that Robert Quinn, because that is old news, was traded a couple days ago, and now we're seeing the Bears defense be a complete rebuild along with their offense as well. I think that this just goes to show you that they completely believe in Justin Fields and moving forward. Like, his stat line is nothing impressive. Obviously 151 yards and 2 touchdowns. That's great. And 17 for 23, but the yards by itself is not anything to be fascinated about, is what people are concerned. But the fact that he's been more efficient, he's been more accurate, he's been reading defenses a lot better and been making great moves, and he's not afraid to take off and run. So what you said with the Bears coaching, he has been able to like put Justin in a position to win, and that's one thing that we got to look forward to. And honestly, if we can get him some more weapons and just get him a better offensive line, I feel like he'll be all set. Yeah. Another game that really stood out to me, and this is a team that both me and you have been I've kind of brought you to the other side of this team over the past couple weeks, and you've kind of believed in them a little bit, and that is the New York Jets, because we both picked them in our pick'ems, and with the way that they've been playing, how they beat the Packers and beat the Dolphins and everything. Obviously, that was without Tua, but like Breece Hall was dominating the team running wise, and Zach Wilson was doing just enough to win. But Derek, is it fair to say now that Zach Wilson is holding this team back? Because we saw this weekend, he threw 3 interceptions that caused this game to get out of hand, and ultimately the sole purpose on why the Jets lost to the Patriots. Because if they had a next level quarterback or somebody that was a little bit better, these Jets would be now sitting at what would they be? They'd be 6-2 if it wasn't for that. Is it too late to say, or too early to say, Zach Wilson is the problem?
Well, I mean, before I even get into that, I mean, you got me hooked on both the New York teams right now. And sure enough, the one time I follow your lead with both the New York teams, they both lose. So thanks for that.
But you know what? I wasn't expecting that. The Giants were playing really well. And I didn't think that anybody was going to stop them. They came off of beating the Ravens, for crying out loud. The Ravens have a good defense. So.
Listen, I know I should have known that this game was going to be a trap game. The Patriots lose at home, very disgusting game. And then, they're wanting to go out and remind their divisional rival who they are, right? I should have known that from the get-go. And listen, that's why
I agree. Flacco should be the QB.
And look, I mean, obviously this going 20 of 41 is not good, throwing under 50%. And I mean, he threw for 355 yards and 2 touchdowns, but of course, like you said, the 3 interceptions, he can't do that, right? 3 interceptions against the Patriots, you just won't win. That's just kind of one of those situations. I'm not going to sit here and say that it's too late for the Jets to try and keep going with Zach, because I think that numbers wise, Zach Wilson is showing you that he can keep going and he can still improve. But obviously there is still improvement. They still need to get better with him, because the rest of their team is playing really well, and the team is playing well because of the culture that's being built in that locker room. The only problem is like culture can only get you so far. And if your main leader of your team, aka your quarterback, is not doing what is necessary to get you wins, then at the end of the day, it's just not going to matter. I will give him the benefit of the doubt. It is the Patriots. It's a divisional game. He had a rough one. It's one of those situations, and and it's against Bill Belichick. He's a good way to exploit the offenses of other teams. So listen, I get it, and it obviously wasn't a good game. We'll just have to see how Zach Wilson responds to this And do they go out and does he go out and perform a lot better next week? If we see some more of what we just saw here, then yeah, I think it might be time where the Jets start thinking of, a different alternative at quarterback.
No, and that's what I've had conversations with somebody about. Like, this Jets team is primed right now and in a position to where they can succeed. They can make it to the playoffs if they continue to do well and win games. But ultimately, if it comes down to where Zach Wilson can't perform, they're going to start probably looking at trade options to trade him to a different team, get some draft capital, and then trade up and get a good quarterback this draft. Two more games I want to look at here. And one of them is the New York Giants and the Seattle Seahawks. Obviously, like you said, we were both high on both New York teams, and they both let us down this week. But I did not expect that from the Giants. Honestly, looking at this game, looking back at it, I was looking at it like, okay, the Seahawks are a team that's been a scrappy bunch lately. We've seen them go toe to toe with some of the good teams. We've seen how well Geno Smith has been playing. But ultimately, I thought Daniel Jones and that, Giants team led by Brian Daboll was actually going to step up and continue because, like, we've seen the Giants beat or almost beat the Cowboys. They were coming back the last few seconds. That was their only loss that they had. We've seen them beat the Ravens. We've seen them beat the Packers, and Ravens have a pretty damn good defense. And, they're winning the close games. Obviously, what we've seen is Daniel Jones still needs that true deep threat, that true number one wide receiver, but they have proven time and time again to win the close games, and that's what we thought here. So looking at this game, everybody just laid an egg. Saquon had 20 carries for 53 yards. Daniel Jones went 17 of 31 for 176, 0 touchdowns and 0 interceptions. And this shows, Derek, like, this is a game that we both thought would be a good win for the Giants, and we thought that but they laid an egg. So what's your thoughts on this game?
Well, I mean, I think both things, and I tried telling you this a week ago, and I think both of these things ended up being true in this, is that one, that Geno Smith and the Seahawks are actually pretty legitimate. I mean, they're not powerhouses like some other teams in the NFC, but Geno Smith is more than capable of leading this team to victory. And that's what we just saw this last week. I mean, again, went 23 of 34, 212 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions again, and also had 5 carries for 26 yards. So all in all, 230 yards on the game for Geno Smith. Geno Smith doesn't always get the huge numbers, but he does enough for his team to win. And I think that's what the Seahawks are really going about right now. Their culture feels different now, kind of like what we've been saying about the Giants, is that the Seahawks culture feels different now with Geno Smith being the quarterback. And then the other thing I was telling you about is this team is only as good as Saquon Barkley is. It's the only thing. And that's not a knock on Daniel Jones. Okay, Daniel Jones has no receivers. None. They got rid of Kadarius Toney. They got rid of Kadarius Toney, his only other true weapon out there. And they don't have anyone else. Like, they literally have no one else to throw the football to. He went 17 of 31 for 176 yards. That's just not going to get it done. And, of course, Saquon had 20 carries, but only had 53 yards, right? They just had no answer offensively for the Seahawks. And like I said, if Saquon doesn't have an insane game, the Giants just aren't going to stay in the game. They rely on Saquon too much because they just don't have any weapons for Daniel Jones to throw the football to. And Daniel Jones, if he has weapons, can be good. But he's not Andrew Luck, who Andrew Luck for a lot of years had one good weapon, but that was all he ever had, right? Andrew Luck was able to make the best of that. But Daniel Jones is just trying not to lose games for the Giants instead of going out and winning games. So that's my takeaway on this game. I mean, I think both are true.
Yeah, no, I agree. Saquon has been trying to put that team on his shoulders for the past 4 weeks, and it's happened back to back weeks. And we've been seeing it time and time again, but like if the Giants really wanted to be relevant, they had to make a move to get a good weapon for Daniel Jones, whether it be Jerry Jeudy, whether it would have been Brandon Cooks, Chase Claypool, whoever it was, that they needed to make a move to try to get a weapon for Daniel Jones. And they failed to do that. So, the Giants, I feel like they are in a position to where they're going to make the playoffs, but they're going to be a first round exit because they don't have anybody that can compete and tear the top off the defenses. So it'll be interesting to see how it goes. But the last game I want to go over with before we move on to the next topic, and that was yesterday's game, the Cleveland Browns versus the Cincinnati Bengals.
The game he went to, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes, I did. I went to that game, saw it in person, and it was glorious seeing that happen. But I've told people time and time again, Joe Burrow does not do well against Cleveland. He is 0-4 now in his career versus the Cleveland Browns, and yet the only AFC North team he has not beaten. And without Jamar Chase, it really shows that Joe Burrow struggles heavily. And Derek, I've said this time and time again for the past 4 weeks. And yesterday goes to show you how much better this team is when this defense steps up and plays well. This defensive coordinator that we had and our defensive scheme has been absolutely terrible the past few weeks, giving up 25 to 30 points a game, not keeping it close, not stopping the run, whatever it may be. And that just goes to show you how bad this team is. But when we can buckle down, have the defensive game that we did yesterday, we held a team that, has been high scoring offense. Joe Burrow's thrown for 400 yards. He's thrown for, several touchdowns and everything. An offensive juggernaut team like this, we held them in check for 90% of the game and, shut them down. We put the pressure on Joe Burrow, got 5 sacks on him total, and locked up his receivers, and he could not make anything happen. That's because this defense actually stepped up and played how they were supposed to. If they played like this for the past 4 weeks, we would be 6-2 right now, and we'd be talking a different story and a different tune. But this defense stepped up, got turnovers. Nick Chubb lit it up in the run game again, like always. Jacoby Brissett was looking clean with all of his throws and all of the decisions that he was making. And, we didn't ask him to do a lot, but he did just enough to win the games. Obviously, we got 3 more games coming up before Deshaun Watson comes back. But what is your thoughts on this, with the Browns having the Bengals number and Joe Burrow, laying an egg?
Yeah, I mean, what was there not to like if you were a Browns fan yesterday, right? I mean, you talked about this defense not playing well at all for the majority of the year, but I mean, this was the huge outlier. I mean, they gave up 229 yards of total yards yesterday, Chase, and the majority of those came in about a third of those came in the fourth quarter. So, going into it, I mean, the Browns defense just was ferocious. I mean, they only had 193 passing yards on the day and 36 rushing yards. You will win every game playing that way. So if the defense can play like that every game, then you're going to have no problem winning. I mean, that's just the ultimate case of it. The defense, like you said, I mean, had 5 sacks, and it's amazing too, because Deion Jones, your new linebacker, who's now playing now, he got a sack in that game too. So that's pretty insane. Myles Garrett obviously had 1.5 sacks yesterday. And I will sit here and I will say this to you. You texted me last night and you asked me an important question. And I had to eat my words yesterday, and I had to come out and I have to say it. And it is the truth. Nick Chubb is the best running back in the NFL right now by a long shot. It is clear. Now, obviously, he's got a better offensive line and scheme the way that they do it versus with what Saquon Barkley's dealing with. But it's clear that when Nick Chubb runs the football, it wears you down as the game goes on. 23 carries for 101 yards, averaging almost 4.5 yards a carry and 2 touchdowns. I mean, again, and this Bengals defense is no joke. And you guys were down a couple offensive linemen at a couple points in that game. And Nick Chubb still does what he does, man. I mean, that dude is just, him and Saquon are just such physical specimens, but they dominate the game in different ways. Like Saquon destroys you with his agility and his ability to create space, but Chubb is just a mauler, man. I mean, that dude is so hard to bring down. If there's honestly one dude in the NFL, people always say, like, who's the worst to have to bring down, and it's Derrick Henry. Ask a bunch of NFL players, and I think they probably tell you Nick Chubb's probably the second, if not the first hardest to bring down. Can't help but feel like, yeah, Nick Chubb's presence in that game was what the Browns needed to be able to move the ball down the field. And of course, like you said, Jacoby Brissett did enough to win the game. He didn't do a lot, but he did enough to win the game. It moved the ball down the field. They were able to score field goals. And on the few occasions where they were in close to get to touchdowns, he helped them get down the field, and Nick Chubb took over from there. And of course, the defense had a few times where they put the Browns in really good position for field position. I mean, there's just nothing to be mad about with if you're a Browns fan after that. And I told you, I texted you that right going into the fourth quarter.
I was scared though, man. You know that the Browns.
And I'm sitting here and I'm saying, I told him, guys, I said, Chase, it's over. Congratulations. He got to go to a great game. He's like, I can't trust it, man. And then sure enough, they give up a touchdown a minute later. And then 2 minutes later, score a touchdown with Amari Cooper. I said, I told you it's over. Okay. So
I was scared. I'm a Browns fan. Okay?
He's a Browns fan, guys. He was nervous. All right. So, it's real quick. Why are we State still 2, but Tennessee is 1? Well, I can give you the clear, definitive answer right now. 1, they're in the SEC. Second, they've got offensive firepower and the Heisman favorite. Second or third, they have a better strength of schedule than we do. They have more earned ranked wins than we do. So that's why. But yeah, the Browns had a fantastic game. Cincinnati Bengals, just had no answer all game. Defensively, offensively, they just looked out of sync again. So congratulations.
Thank you. And you know what I find funny? Like, I find it very funny that, these Bengals fans are making excuses saying like, well, we didn't have Jamar Chase. We didn't have Chidobe Awuzie. And I'm like, if you have to rely on one specific guy to win you the game all the time, Joe Burrow does not have an answer because he's got another good wide receiver in T. Higgins, another good wide receiver in Tyler Boyd. He's got a good running back in Joe Mixon. If you can't win with those 3 weapons right there and you're relying on one guy in Jamar Chase, you are going to lose this game regardless of how well they are playing because you cannot rely just on one guy. And, make excuses all you want. We had 2 of our top offensive linemen out. We had JOK out. We had Denzel Ward, our best corner, out. We had guys out on our defensive side of the ball too. And we also had David Njoku, who arguably this year has been playing like a top 5 tight end. Not saying he is one, he's playing like one. And we had him gone too. And we still made plays and we still made things happen. So you cannot sit there and just blame your loss on one guy not being on the team when it's a collaborative effort and he's got more weapons than just Jamar Chase. But it goes to show you how he's relied on him too much over the past year in order to win some games. But, that's just me. I'm glad that the Browns won. But, Derek, I will end it on this. Brian Baldinger came out and said that if the Browns can get their defense in check and they could play well like this, we can go toe-to-toe with anybody in the AFC and in the NFL. Because if we sit there and we do not give up 35 to 40 points a game like we have been, or like 25 to 30, then we're sitting right here at the top of the conference with the Chiefs, with the Bills, with the Dolphins, trying to compete for the top of the division and the top of the conference. So I agree with them. I think that our defense has been the whole sole purpose on why we have not won so many games. And what's going to happen if this defense can step up and play like they did, we're going to do all right. Moving on to injuries, over the weekend and some that are going to be, great to know for people that are coming back. Browns going 8-9. We'll see. We'll see, Camonte. Obviously we got 3 more games. We got the Dolphins, Bills, and Bucks, and then Watson comes back. Very easily could win against the Dolphins. Could beat the Bucks. That'll put us at 5-6 if we lose to the Bills. By the time Watson comes back, we got the Texans after that. And then, a very easy schedule to where we can win out and make the playoffs, if not win at least 9 games. So we'll see. But moving on to injuries, Chidobe Awuzie was one guy that got injured in the Bengals game, and they fear that he may have had a patella knee injury that may put him out for the rest of the year. Obviously, there's that. They're also missing DJ Reader. What are some other big key injuries that happened over the weekend that we should be looking out for, Derek?
Well, I mean, you talk about some of the injuries that have happened. Shaq Barrett for the Buccaneers is going to be out for the remainder of the year with a lower leg injury as well. I mean, you talk about the Bucs already being, in a bad situation, and now you lose one of your best defensive players over the last 3 seasons when they've been on that run. That one definitely hurts. I know the Colts just lost Tyquan Lewis again for the rest of the year. This last game against the Commanders, which sucks because this is the second year in a row in week 8 that the guy has a lower leg injury that ends up ending his season. In 2021, he had he intercepted a ball and then blew out his knee in week 8 against the Titans and had to leave for the rest of the year. And then this year, week 8 against the Commanders, blows out his knee, or actually tore, it's a pectoral muscle, actually, I think, but something different, but he's going to be out again. That one sucks. I know there's been a couple of them. We talked about a few weeks ago, JC Jackson being out for an extended period of time for the Chargers, them paying all that money to get JC Jackson over here. And he played, like 6 games and that's it. So I don't know if there's any more that we can think of right off the top of our head.
Yeah, and good news, though, Keenan Allen is looking to make his return to the field starting this next week.
About damn time. Jesus.
Keenan Allen's
wanting him back for like 6 weeks.
He's been looking to make his return to the field after being out for quite some time. Mike Williams is now going to be sidelined for 2 to 6 weeks with a high ankle sprain. David Njoku is going to be gone 2 to 6 weeks with a high ankle sprain. Then you've got Jamar Chase out 4 to 6 weeks with a hip injury. There's been a lot of high ankle sprain injuries that have happened in the league this year. And one bright side to a defensive team, a team that's been looking for a lot of defensive help, and that is the Steelers. TJ Watt is looking to make his return to the Steelers after their bye week this week. So we will have to wait and see, if and when he plays for the Steelers next week. But, a huge, huge return for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and one thing that they could be looking forward to. So that's the latest on the injury news. If there's any more, we'll go over them, with our episode tomorrow that we're going to be doing. And moving on quickly, Derek, we're going to go over our picks for this week. Do you have them pulled up?
I do have them pulled up. So
Okay.
First things first, we didn't do the Thursday night game, obviously. So that one's off the table there.
Oh, we didn't? I thought we did pick that one.
Yeah, we didn't get that one. So we actually ended up losing out on another game. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so you did have the 7. Okay, so yeah, we ended up having that issue. So we could have had an extra one game that we didn't have added to the record. So whatever it is. But anyways, you went 7-7 this week. I went 10-4. So overall record, you are 65, 56, and 1. I am 70, 51, and 1. So I have a 5-game lead on you now. still have a chance to come back, though. We talked about the Lions and the Dolphins. You picked the Lions to win in this game, and early on, it certainly looked like you were about to get it, and then the Dolphins figured it out offensively and put up a 30-burger on the Lions. Your response to that?
I got to stop picking them.
Yeah, you got to stop picking the Lions, bro. They're doing nothing but hurting you every time.
I really got to stop picking them. Like, their offense is great.
They won that week 1, and then they haven't won since, but yet you still keep picking them.
I keep picking them because their offense is so damn good, thinking that one of these games they're going to outscore their opponent and finally hold them in check. But that defense is just giving up so much and not making stuff happen. So I thought maybe that this would be a week where, that high-powered offense could go toe-to-toe with the Dolphins, and they could end up being great and play, like what we've seen with them scoring 30 to 40 points. And obviously it didn't happen. So, I'm very disappointed.
And then we go to the next game. You and I both picked the Falcons over the Panthers. That was a very dramatic one there. Probably the greatest play that we've seen all season from PJ Walker to DJ Moore. Ultimately, to there being a bogus flag thrown at the end of the touchdown for an illegal celebration. And the extra point was missed by the kicker. And therefore, they ended up going into overtime, and the Falcons were able to win because the Panthers kicker missed it again in overtime. So we both got that one. We talked earlier about the Jags. They lost it for us both there. The Vikings with the W, despite DeAndre Hopkins being back and performing insanely well, the Vikings were still able to come out with the victory 34-26. So the Vikings, who are now 6-1 through 8 weeks of the season. So that's very impressive. The Cowboys and the Bears. You picked the Bears in this. I picked the Cowboys. Why would you ever consider doing that, Chase?
Listen, okay.
I want to hear your logic. I want to hear the logic behind that pick.
We made the mistake. I made the mistake of not actually going with the pick of picking the Bears on a Monday Night Football game versus the New England Patriots. And nobody, including you, expected them to have the game that they did.
Of course not.
Against the New England Patriots.
Yeah.
I saw that game, saw how well Justin was playing, and I'm like, you know what? I'm going with my gut instinct on this one.
Fell into the trap, ladies and gentlemen.
And I think that Justin could have a great game and play really well. And he was beating the Cowboys for a little bit. They were going toe-to-toe, and he was leading the offense down the field. But then again, that David Montgomery fumble fricked it up for everybody, and it really, really pissed me off. But like the Bears were not that bad in that game, and I thought that they ultimately
defensively. Defensively, of course.
Defensively,
he gave up 49.
Defensively, they laid an egg, but offensively, they were competing with them. And to be real honest, I thought that the Bears would pull out a win on this one. So I'm very upset that they didn't, but they were close. Very close.
You and I both picked the Saints, and the Saints just absolutely destroyed the Raiders.
Kept switching, you dickhead.
Yeah, whatever. Folks, for anyone that wonders, we both picked the Saints, and then he said he was going to pick the Raiders just for the hell of it because he wanted to be different. Chase, if anything, you should not be talking because I did you a favor by sticking with my original pick. If it wasn't for you wanting to do that, me not sticking with you, then you would have lost another one. So shut the hell up.
Yeah, but you would have lost
you a game. I won you a game, so shut up.
You would have lost it too because you would have stuck with me.
It doesn't matter. You still would have lost. You would have been 6-8 instead of 7-7. You had another losing week. All right. The Eagles win in dramatic fashion over the Steelers, 35-13. Again, the Eagles, the only undefeated team left in the NFL at 7-0 after beating them 35-13. A.J. Brown, again, unbelievable that he was ever traded in the first place. We talked about that in the draft. The Patriots beat the Jets 22-17. I'm disappointed. I followed Chase on that one because I didn't think for a second that the Patriots would be a trap game for the Jets.
I
And
didn't think so either. I did not
it
think
turned
so.
out to be a bite in the ass for us. Anyways, I think this is the only other one that you and I picked differently on. And that was the Titans versus the Texans. You picked the Texans. I picked the Titans. Now, obviously, you knew that Malik Willis was going to be the quarterback. And I assumed that you thought that that was going to play in the Texans' favor. And sure enough, it almost did. But then again, Derrick Henry decided to run for 219 yards and 2 touchdowns on the Texans, which I told you was the way that the Tennessee Titans were going to win, because no team is worse at stopping the run than the Texans. Why did you decide to go with the Texans on this?
One of the reasons is because Malik Willis was playing, and I thought that, with him having his first official start in the NFL, I thought maybe, it would be different. I thought Dameon Pierce was going to run up and down the field on him, because obviously I thought it was going to be a battle of the 2 running backs, because obviously Davis Mills isn't going to be able to lead his team down the field. But I don't know. I really thought that this was going to be a trap game. I really thought the Texans were going to pull it out. Derrick Henry has not shown up all season long in dramatic fashion like this. And Derrick, I had an argument with people over, what's up, Luck 7? But I had an argument with people over the weekend in my group chat, and obviously me and you have not been high on Derrick Henry when it comes to putting him in our rankings as the top running back in the NFL, because, obviously we have said that time and time again, when you play in a division with the Jags and the Texans, you're going to get a lot of yards and you're going to get a lot of carries. And that's another thing. A lot of carries is the reason why he's doing it. And that was a prime example of, again,
he did only get 9 more carries than Chubb and doubled his yards. I would just say this, obviously, when it comes to Chubb and Henry, Henry at the height has the higher ceiling when it comes to stats. Chubb is never going to get 230 rushing yards in a game, partially because of the fact that the Browns don't ever want to run the ball 30 times with Nick Chubb. But even then, again, he still never gets there. But then again, the difference is Nick Chubb is a lot more consistent. Nick Chubb doesn't have 50-yard rushing games one week and then 150 the next week. He's almost always in between 190 yards to about 130. It's normally right in between there. It's almost every game is in between there. So that's why it's different. But go ahead.
But what I was going to say is, he did only have 10 more carries and everything, but the carries factors into to this as well, because, with Derrick Henry, he had 219 yards, but then again, it's against the freaking Texans. Where has he been all the rest of the season? Chubb, like you said, the most that he's gotten this season, he's gotten 13 carries for 146 yards in one game this year. And, if there's one thing that Chubb's been able to do over Derrick, he's been more consistent, and he's been able to do it with a lot less carries than what Derrick Henry has. If it takes you 30 carries to get 219 yards, that is crazy. It's
really not. That's 6 yards a carry. That's 6 yards a carry on average.
But the
Browns over 2 yards more per carry than what your guy had last weekend. Now, I'm just going to say it. Derrick Henry always does this to the Texans. Almost every game, it feels like he does this to the Texans. I think the lowest total that he's had in the last 3 seasons against the Texans was 105 yards. Every single game in the past 3 games that he has played against them, Chase, in 4 of the last 5 games he's played against them, he's ran for 200 yards. I mean, it just goes to show you just how bad the Texans are. I mean, and that's all it is. I mean, at the end of the day, that's all we'll say on the matter.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to say is that, the argument that I was having is like people thought it was impressive. I was just like, it's impressive to get 200 yards, but like it's not that impressive when it's against the Houston Texans. I mean, obviously the Browns
Well,
played
I
the
would
Texans.
say it's impressive. Jonathan Taylor couldn't do that.
I mean,
but then again, Jonathan Taylor has a very terrible offensive
then
line.
again, Jonathan Taylor also didn't get 30 carries in a game to be able to do it. Like, but what I'm saying is, here's what I'm gonna say is the Browns play the Texans later on in the year, and the one number that I circled when I put a picture in our group chat is 32 carries. If Nick Chubb goes into Houston or they come to Cleveland, he puts up 150 on the Houston Texans, but does it with 10 or 12 carries. That just goes to show you that he did it with far less carries and did it against the Texans. But that's all I'm going to say. Like, I didn't think it was that impressive because it was against the Texans, and nobody wants to bring up like how he's laid a big egg against other like top defenses. But anyway, let's go on to the other games. Who was the next team that we
had both picked the Giants, and they obviously lost to the Seahawks 27-13. We both picked the Colts. They lost in dramatic fashion, 17-16. Yeah, I should have picked the Commies too. The 49ers and the Rams, we both picked the 49ers in this game and were victorious due to the fact that Christian McCaffrey had both a rushing touchdown, a receiving touchdown, and a passing touchdown in that game.
You also want to know why I picked this? The Rams have not beaten the 49ers in the regular season since 2019.
Doesn't surprise me. And for as bad as the Rams have played this year, I'm not surprised. And then the Bills and the Packers. Bills extend their lead again, only losing one game this year, 27-17 against the Green Bay Packers. And then, of course, as we talked about earlier with the Browns and the Bengals with that one. Now, let's go into the trades, Chase. We got a lot of them that happened today.
Yes,
We're
sir.
going to start, and a lot of them have happened over the last few days. But let's start with this one. And it was one of the first ones that happened in the morning. Or actually, it was one that happened yesterday. And it was the trade of Roquan Smith. So we talked about Robert Quinn a few days ago. Roquan Smith's best friend getting traded and away to the I believe it was the not the Dolphins.
Eagles.
Eagles, right. So the Eagles taking him over. And then today Roquan Smith gets sent to the Baltimore Ravens.
Hi, Derek.
Hi, Dooney. The Baltimore Ravens defense gets a little bit more scary, Chase. So the Ravens get Roquan Smith. Hi, Dooney. Hi. You hear me? Hi. So cute. Anyways, the Bears received linebacker AJ Klein. They also received a 2nd-round pick and a 5th-round pick. Now, Chase, they look at this, and then the NFL has this marked down, and this is Eric Edholm from the lead draft writer for the NFL. He marks this as a B- trade for the Ravens and a B+ trade for the Bears. How in the world could he possibly sit here and say that the Bears won this trade by getting a 2nd-round pick and a 5th-round pick and a backup linebacker? This felt like a steal for the Ravens.
It was. It totally was, because like Roquan Smith is a top 5 linebacker and has been leading the league in tackles over the past couple years. And, he is due for a contract. But the thing is, why would you give a guy like that up for a 2nd and a 5th when you could easily get a 1st-rounder for him? And I don't get it. I really don't get what Ryan Poles is really thinking with getting Roquan Smith or giving up Roquan Smith for a 2nd-round pick. Like, yes, you got a 5th, but like, I would not have taken anything less than a 1st. Anything less than a 1st for Roquan Smith, because a top 5 linebacker, a guy that could be a difference maker on your defense, and a guy that you could easily plug and play into any defensive scheme, and he could immediately be a game changer and be that missing piece that'll lead you to the next level, and you give him up for a second and a fifth. That is horrendous for the Bears. And obviously the Bears use that pick to trade it to the Steelers, but we'll get into that one in just a second.
It is crazy because, I mean, think about it, Chase. We were hearing about Roquan Smith getting a contract extension soon. Well, the Ravens need to pay Lamar Jackson, maybe. Be kind of difficult to get both of these guys under contract this next year. So this offseason for the Ravens is going to be hella fun. Next one that we have. So apparently the Dolphins are all chips in right now because they went and traded for defensive end stud linebacker edge rusher Bradley Chubb from the Denver Broncos, who said, by the way, that if they lost to the Jaguars, they would be willing to trade Bradley Chubb. They didn't lose, but they still traded him anyway. So the Dolphins received Bradley Chubb and their 5th-round draft pick in 2025, Chase. So 3 years from now, that's going to be a 5th-round draft pick for them. Now, the Denver Broncos, on the other hand, received a 1st-round draft pick, the 49ers pick that the Dolphins received from the Trey Lance deal from last year, 2 years ago, and they also received a 2024 4th-round pick and also received running back Chase Edmonds. They were looking for somebody to bring in who can help fill the reins of the fact that Melvin Gordon's the only weapon that they have in the backfield right now. Who won this trade? Was it Miami or was it Denver?
I'm going to say Miami, just because when you look at this division, you've got the Patriots and the Bills. Defensively, the Patriots have been pretty good, but the Bills you're trying to compete with. Tua Tagovailoa beat the Buffalo Bills earlier this season. And obviously, offensively, the Dolphins are looking great, but defensively, they were missing a few pieces. They got that Jordan Phillips out of Miami a couple years ago that they really wanted. They ended up getting a few key pieces. They've got a good secondary, but they don't have another good edge rusher to come off the edge opposite of Phillips. And, you still got is it Dexter Lawrence? No, he's with the Giants.
Yeah, it was Dexter Lawrence that you're talking about.
Yeah, you got Dexter Lawrence in the middle as the defensive tackle, who is a good piece on that defensive line. I think Bradley Chubb,
who you're talking about is Christian Wilkins.
Christian Wilkins. Yeah, that's it. Dexter Lawrence is with the Giants. Christian Wilkins.
Yeah. That's what I was thinking of.
Yeah. So Christian Wilkins being in that middle of that defense has also been pretty good. But Bradley Chubb's going to be that missing piece. Now, granted, the Dolphins had 2 first-rounders, but they had to forfeit their own because of the whole Stephen Ross tampering thing. So they've got no 1st-round draft pick this year. And the Dolphins also sent a 5th-round pick to the 49ers to get Jeff Wilson. Now, I'm pretty sure you were going to bring that up, but the thing is, Jeff Wilson was also pretty good with running the ball, and with Mike McDaniels coming from that 49ers system, I think he likes to have that running back by committee, and getting Jeff Wilson was also another good piece to that. So I think the Dolphins won this deal, but looking at it in the Broncos point of view, at least they got a 1st-round pick back. They lost theirs to the Seahawks, but they got one back. So
I think this is one of the more fair trades that we've seen from both sides. I mean, Bradley Chubb has all the means of being worth a 1st-round draft pick. I mean, Bradley Chubb is a very, very good player at his peak. He can be one of the best edge rushers in the NFL when he puts his mind to it. And you're right. The Dolphins, they're in all-in mode right now. They truly feel that they're not very far behind the other team in the AFC East in the Buffalo Bills. And they're trying to separate themselves from the rest of the division, trying to keep up with them. They're trying to keep themselves in the playoff push because they feel with Tua back and with that offense playing the way it is, they think if we can just get one more guy to help get after the quarterback, that's the most important thing. there's the three most important things in the NFL, Chase: the quarterback, a guy to protect your quarterback, and the guy to go after an opposing quarterback. Those are the three most important things. And Bradley Chubb is one of those. And he is really, really good. And I like this trade for both teams. Denver gets a first rounder. They get a fourth rounder for next year. They also get a running back that they can use right now in their system. And of course, the Dolphins get, a guy that can immediately make their defense better. And that's what it's all about. So I like this for both teams.
Do me a favor. Shut the fuck up.
Sorry, that was just a video.
Okay, I'll shut the fuck up then.
No, that was EDP. I ended up pulling up a video from the game last night, and it said, "Y'all are 3-5. Do me a favor, shut the fuck up."
Anyways, let's go to another trade. This time, Chicago actually trading for someone. Yep. And this time they acquire Steelers wide receiver Chase Claypool. Chase Claypool is one of the first players on the trade deadline market that name was brought out. And of course, Chase Claypool has not been the same since his rookie year with Pittsburgh. It just hasn't worked for them. Some issues there, both on the field and off. And, a lot of Steelers people were just like wanting him to be gone at this point. They ended up getting a second round draft pick out of the Bears for Chase Claypool. Well, obviously, Chase, when we're talking about the fact that, they got rid of Roquan Smith, they got rid of Robert Quinn, this team's going to have a ton of cap next year. So, giving up a second rounder is not necessarily something that's going to be a big problem for the Chicago Bears. No doubt that Pittsburgh won this trade because that second round pick is definitely worth more than what Claypool is. But, we were talking about this team needing to give Justin Fields another weapon to go along with what he has. And Claypool's athletic ability and size definitely is a receiver type that Justin Fields can definitely use. What do you say about this pick?
I think the Bears are still freaking stupid because, not only they did give Justin Fields a weapon, they did give him a guy that is like 6'3",
220 pounds.
Yeah. They did give him a guy that, has good speed, good hands whenever he, can actually play really well. But the problem that they gave up a second round pick for Chase Claypool. Chase Claypool's not even worth that. He's worth like a third or a fourth. And the thing is, you've got 2 second rounders that you would have had, one that's your own, and then one from the Ravens for Roquan Smith. And that's obviously the one that you traded to the Steelers for this pick for. But the thing is, you could have used those 2 second rounders and traded back into the first round to get somebody. You could have even traded up into later into the first, or even to the top of the second round to grab a top tier wide receiver, instead of getting a 1 year rental with Chase Claypool and then letting him walk and stuff at the end of the season. I think that the Bears, if they were going to get Chase Claypool, they should have tried for a third or a fourth and not given up a second. Cause I think that you could very well easily find a wide receiver talented enough in the second round to go after for him, or even trade up to get somebody in the late first round. So, it's a good move for the Steelers because, like you said, they got a second rounder out of it, but a dumb move on the Bears' part.
Yep. And then the other one, the Lions dealing away with one of their weapons. They are trading tight end TJ Hawkinson to the Minnesota Vikings in the division, Chase. So that's very strange to say the least. The Vikings are receiving TJ Hawkinson, a 4th round draft pick this year, and a conditional 4th round draft pick in 2024 that if TJ Hawkinson plays a certain amount of time in 2023 can go to a 3rd round pick. And in return, the Lions receive a 2nd round pick and a 3rd round pick for next year. So the Minnesota Vikings are hoping that next year's 4th round pick will basically just be them switching 3rd round picks in that. What do you think? So basically, I mean, we're saying they got Hawkinson and a 4th round pick, but gave up a 2nd round pick for that. Me personally, Chase, I think that's a great trade for Minnesota. What do you think?
No, I think so too. Obviously, they lost Irv Smith Jr. to an injury. They needed a tight end. TJ Hawkinson has the potential to be a top 5 tight end in the league. He just hasn't been utilized very well in Detroit. I think that, it would have been a great weapon for the next upcoming quarterback, which is at this point looking like CJ Stroud, for them to actually be, or getting him a good weapon and everything. But I think that with him going to the Vikings, he's going to be utilized with Kirk Cousins. And, it just gives the Lions more draft capital to try to build that defense, because that is one thing that they are subpar with, is their defensive side of the ball. So it's a great move for the Vikings. I still think it's a good move for the Lions. Obviously, you could have tried to get a 1st rounder for him, but a 2nd rounder and a 3rd rounder is a pretty decent deal for TJ Hawkinson.
Yep, I agree. All right, so 2 more trades that we'll talk about, and then we're going to end. Calvin Ridley.
Yes, I was waiting for this one.
From the Falcons.
I was waiting for this one.
To the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, Calvin Ridley is still suspended for the year due to gambling on a game. Ironically enough, Chase, he's being traded to the team that he placed a bet on for the Falcons beating the Jaguars. So the game in which that Calvin Ridley got suspended for, in which he was not playing, bet on the Falcons beating the Jaguars when he wasn't playing. And now he's being traded to the team that he bet against that put him in this situation in the first place. Funny story, but nevertheless, the Jacksonville Jaguars gave up a conditional 5th and a conditional 2nd rounder for 2024. So I'm assuming that means if in 2023, Calvin Ridley has this much stats, this much play time, this, that it's going to turn out to be a 1st. I mean, I don't know, Chase. I mean, I think that I like, what's up?
It was a conditional 2nd round pick?
Yeah, it's a conditional 2nd rounder in 2024.
Okay.
So very interesting there. But I like this trade for both teams. I mean, obviously Atlanta moving forward, they wanted to try to look elsewhere to try to improve their team. They didn't need Calvin Ridley because, they have Drake London and Kyle Pitts that they're going to try to focus on. So, you got a 5th rounder for this year and you got another high draft pick in 2024. And then Jacksonville gets another wide receiver for their team that can really help Trevor Lawrence next year when he starts developing more. What do you look at for this trade?
So I want to go off topic here for a second. Like I said, I rewatched a couple of the Jags games that have gone on this year, and it's very adamant, in my opinion, that defensively the Jags are looking pretty good. They've got Devin Lloyd, they've got Travon Walker, they got Josh Allen on that side of the ball. They're looking pretty good. Offensively, they were missing some stuff. Obviously they got Travis Etienne, who's done pretty good. They got Christian Kirk, who has been phenomenal. Obviously I'm not saying he's worth the contract that he's gotten paid, but he stepped up and played in big games. And you're going to be letting Marvin Jones walk this offseason and everything like that. But looking at this team, I told you and I told everybody else this, if the Jags had a true number 1 wide receiver, this team and Trevor Lawrence and stuff would be a lot better than what they actually are. And Calvin Ridley going to the Jacksonville Jaguars is going to be a true number 1 weapon for Trevor Lawrence and going to be that key piece that he's missing to help put him over the edge. And that is fantastic. Now, that's not to say they're not going to draft another guy as well to help build it up. But It's going to be very interesting to see what's going to happen moving forward. Now, here's another thing. I was arguing with somebody about this, and I made the assumption of saying, what if he's like Deshaun Watson? And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, everybody's giving Watson so much grief and so much flack for not playing for 2 years. This would be 2 years in a row that Calvin Ridley has not played football. And who's to say that he's going to be as good as what he was when he was playing? And everybody's like, oh, well, it's completely a different scenario because he's a wide receiver and he's a quarterback. No, if you're going to bring that same energy, bring it with Calvin Ridley as the way you are Deshaun Watson. At least that's my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, it's very interesting that, I think that it's a great trade for both sides because I think that Calvin Ridley, if he comes back and plays the way that I know that he can, that is a very good weapon for Trevor Lawrence to have because Calvin Ridley was one of the best route running wide receivers in the NFL before he eventually went rogue for a while. But that's really good. It was a very interesting trade, to say the least. And then the last trade, the Buffalo Bills and the Colts. The Colts traded running back Nyheim Hines, the gadget running back wide receiver specialist, to the Buffalo Bills in exchange for running back Zach Moss and a 2023 conditional 5th round pick. Me personally, Chase, I hated this. I truly hated this for more ways than what I'm going to describe on this podcast. If anybody actually wants to go and watch my reaction to it, watch the video on my other channel, Bring the Juice, tomorrow. It's going to be up, and I'll explain why I don't like it. But Chase, the Colts got rid of Hines because he was costing them $6.1 million a year for him to touch the ball 4 times a game because our stupid ass head coach can't use him. And I am glad he's going to a team that is actually going to be able to use him. Hines' abilities to make plays in the open field is going to be marvelous with the Buffalo Bills. There is not a better team on planet Earth that is better for Nyheim Hines than the Buffalo Bills. Maybe the Kansas City Chiefs, maybe. But Buffalo Bills will use him so perfectly. And this is a bad trade for the Colts because you didn't need Zach Moss, but you took him anyway. And you only got a 6th round pick that might be a 5th. So I didn't like it. I didn't like the trade. I think the Bills definitely won this trade because they basically gave up a 6th round pick that could be a 5th, and you gave up a running back that really wasn't doing much in your offense. What do you make of this trade on both sides?
I am kind of shocked that the Bills didn't try going after Kareem Hunt. I know that he would have
I'm sure they probably did. They probably did, but they probably weighed the asset of saying that, you'd have to give up a higher draft pick maybe for Kareem Hunt. Instead, we could give up a way less draft pick for Hines, who might be better for what they want to use him for.
I mean, yes and no. I mean, Kareem Hunt's obviously, a dog with his running ability and his catching ability. But
right, Hines is a better catcher. But the problem is that Kareem is a better runner. Kareem is a way better runner behind the line, and that's why Kareem Hunt's value is higher because Hines can't really run very much.
Yeah, and I think that's what the Bills were looking for, is a guy that can run very well but also catch out of the backfield, and that's where Kareem comes into play because his catching ability is good. We were only we were willing to offer or accept a 4th round pick for him, so I'm surprised they didn't do that. But, regardless, he's still a Cleveland Brown. I'm happy that he's there. I'm just shocked that they didn't go after him before Hines. But
I'm sure they did. They probably reached out to them first. I think that what they're just insinuating is Devin Singletary and the Bills' offense has been running the ball fine with just Singletary and Allen. Like, they don't need a second running back to run. They need another guy that's a gadget player that can open up their offense even more.
Oh, he
And
could do that.
There's clearly more things that Hines can do in the receiving game than Kareem Hunt can. Now, obviously, Kareem Hunt's the more overall better running back because he can literally do the running aspect. That's the difference.
And he can catch the ball too.
I'm not saying he can't, but there is not a NFL analyst out there that will tell you that Hines doesn't do more in the passing game for you than Kareem Hunt. Because Hines is not a running back. Hines is a glorified receiver that plays the running back position. Hines and his ability to get open is second to none. That dude is way more agile and he's faster than Kareem. Obviously, Kareem is stronger and has better vision running between the tackles. That's where you get that. I think that just they saw Hines in the passing ability is what they want, and it would cost them less. And they could get rid of a Zach Moss in that regard by just taking on Hines, who they don't have to re-sign in 2 years because he's currently under contract. That's the difference with Kareem is you'd have to restructure a contract with Kareem at some point. But with Hines, you don't have to do that right now because he's currently under a contract that you can just renegotiate.
Yeah. Well, like, I don't know. I mean, I was looking at it as like Kareem would take over the role as the number one back because obviously he's better than Devin Singletary. And, he can play both that aspect of being a pass catcher and also a great runner. And that's what the Bills are missing for them to be like that true like threat to be a Super Bowl contender. But like Nyheim Hines, I think the Bills finesse the Colts in this situation. And I think Chris Ballard, has kind of lost his touch as the Colts GM. Obviously, he was making great decisions when he first got into there, but I think now he's kind of lost his touch, lost his edge, and to get Zach Moss and also get only a 6th round pick that could be a 5th round pick. You guys got finessed in this one, and I honestly could see Jim Irsay moving on from Chris Ballard at the end of the year, and hopefully going with Ed Dodds. Hopefully, but I know that's a guy that you've been lobbying for the Colts to get for quite some time, is letting Ed Dodds take over and run this team. But, I don't know your thoughts on that, but we'll have to wait and see how it goes.
Yep. Well, that's going to do it for this one, everyone. It was a fun episode. We will be back tomorrow with another one. Thank you guys so much. This is the Chasing Larger Sports Stories podcast. Thank you all for tuning in. Have a good rest of your Tuesday evening.